إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أرسله بدين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله ولو كره الكافرون. We praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we seek Allah's mercy and forgiveness, and we declare that there is no deity worth worshipping except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was sent as his final messenger to mankind to make the religion, the deen of Islam apparent to everyone. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. I remind myself and my dear brothers and sisters, O you who believe, of the Quranic injunction, O you who believe, fear Allah as He should be feared and die not except in a state of Islam. Have taqwa, God consciousness of Allah as He deserves, and die not except in a state of submission. In the few moments that I have with you today, I wanted to address a couple issues that I think are important for ourselves and our youth. And alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed us to be in a country like Canada, where we have our rights preserved, where we can be equal citizens to those people around us, and we can contribute to the society we live in many ways. But we do live in a time where Islamophobia is real, and where certain people have an agenda to turn society against Muslims, and to make Muslims feel like they are not exactly at home, and that they are people that should be looked at with suspicion. And because these elements exist in our society, and because there are people that are pushing for these things in our society, we as a community need to reflect on that and understand what it means to us. Because it is very easy easy for us to internalize what others are projecting onto us unfairly, unjustly, and it becomes a real problem when we or our children actually internalize these ideas. And so I want to address some of these ideas or concepts so that they are clear for us, so that we can explain them to our children, explain to them to the people around us. And the first I want to start with is identity. Sometimes our identity gets questioned. Are we Canadian first, or are we Muslim first? And the question may never be asked in that way. But in the way people attack the Muslim community, that is what they're trying to say. Are you Muslim first, or are you Canadian first? And they may not ask it that way, but our children may be asking themselves that question. Our youth may be asking themselves, am I Canadian first or am I Muslim first? And so that question, in its essence, is an incorrect question. And we need to be clear about this. Whether people are asking it explicitly or not, the reality is we are both Canadian and we are Muslim. But there is more to it than just a simple answer. Because every human being has multiple identities. Every person we interact with, of every faith and every background, has many, many identities at the same time. So you may be a lawyer or a mechanic, you may be a Canadian citizen, you may have a certain religious background, but you also may be of a certain ethnic background. And you may have certain roots in a certain country overseas. And you may have certain languages that you speak. And all of these are different elements of your identity. You have a certain family that you are from. You have a certain tribe you are from. You have a certain background, experiences that you've had. All of these are different identities that we all hold all at the same time. And so to ask someone, are you Canadian first or are you Muslim first, is actually the wrong question. What we need to ask ourselves, or what we need to be able to clarify to people and to ourselves and to our children, is that it depends which identity you're asking about. It depends which identity you're asking about. And so I will give you an example. If you are both a poet and a vegetarian, I know not many Muslims are vegetarians, but let's say that you are a poet and a vegetarian, and you are going to a poetry recital. When you stand for your poetry recital, it would not make much sense for you to assert your vegetarian identity. Nobody would ask for it, and you wouldn't feel any need to explain that to people. Similarly, if you were going to dinner with your friends and you're sitting at the dinner table, there would be no need for you to assert when you are asked what types of foods do you like to eat. There would be no point for you to assert that you're a poet. They are two different dimensions. Those identities exist in different dimensions. And so you are both a poet and a vegetarian, and depending on the circumstance and depending on the context, you will assert one identity or the other. And so in this way, the way to understand our identity as Muslims in Canada is to ask ourselves the context. So when the context is, what are your moral values? And when the context is, what do you believe in beyond the world that we live in? And when the context is, what do you think will happen after death? And when the context is, what is the purpose of life? What's the meaning of life? For all of those questions, our identity and our response is very clearly a Muslim one. We are Muslims, we are believers. We believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us. We believe Allah created us for a reason. We believe that there is a purpose in this life, that people are tested in this world. And they are tested if they will do good or they will do bad. We believe that after death, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring us back to life. We believe that. We believe that after we are brought back to life, we will have a day of judgment. We believe that in that day of judgment, people's destinies forever after will be set. So those questions will only be answered by our belief. But guess what? For every human being on this earth, regardless of their religion, they also have to answer those questions, and they also have an identity that answers those fundamental questions, and it's not to do with their Canadian citizenship or their Canadian identity. So you and I are no different than our Christian friend or brother, or our Jewish friend or brother, or our atheist friend or brother. We are no different than them. There are certain questions in this world that you must answer from a certain perspective, and that is the perspective of faith for us. And it may be very different perspectives for other people. But when it comes to our citizenship, when it comes to our belonging to a nation and to a people and to a country, when it comes to our love for the people of this land, and wanting what's best for all people of this land, we are Canadian first. We are Canadian. When it comes to our civic engagement and our political engagement, we are Canadian. And so depending on the context you are talking about, I can respond to the question of which identity is more relevant. But someone who tries to pit you against, are you Canadian first, are you Muslim first, who usually is coming from an Islamophobic perspective, you must reject that question. And you must explain that we all have multiple identities, and just like you have to go to your faith to respond to the deeper questions of life, he or she must also do the same. You are no different than that. Because what people are trying to say is that Muslims are different. But Muslims are not different. We have our unique faith, of course, and we have our unique religion that we follow and we believe in. But we are no different than anyone else in that everybody has to deal with these questions. The question of the meaning of life. The question of where do we derive our deep values as human beings. And for us, they come from Islam. And so I think that's an important concept for us to not confuse, or our kids not to confuse. I'll address another concept, and that is the concept of belonging. Do we belong in this country? Do we belong in this society? And sometimes people don't feel that belonging, and sometimes people are trying to make you not feel that belonging. And if we look south of the border in the United States, for example, when you look at how someone like Trump leads, and the narrative by which he leads, and the narrative of America first and make America great again, there is a subtext. And the subtext is if you're a true American, you will support America no matter what. If you're a true American, you will support America no matter what. Of course, we in Canada have a very different political landscape. Alhamdulillah, we have a very different political situation and different political leadership that aren't that way. But if you were in America, or if the leadership in Canada ever changed, la samahallah, we could be in a different situation where people are pushing this. Do you truly belong? Or is your belonging to this country more important than anything else? But we as Muslims have a response to that as well. And that response comes from our deen. It comes from our faith. And what it comes down to is a very basic principle. And that is, in Islam, as what we believe in as Muslims, is that there is no such thing as blind loyalty. There is no such thing in Islam as blind loyalty. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is, if you are asking if we belong in this country, of course we belong in this country. We are equal citizens to everybody else, and we care for this country. And we don't just care for the Muslims of this country, we care for all people of this country. We want what is best for them and their families and their children. We want what is best for our society. We want what is best for those who are disadvantaged in society that we live in. But if you're asking me, is my loyalty to this country blind? Do I support this country or this government or this society regardless of what happens, or regardless of what it does, or regardless of how it treats people? The answer is no. The answer is simply, as Muslims, is no. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taught us that no matter what you're talking about, no matter what level of belonging you're talking about, there is no such thing as blind loyalty. And I want you to think of what is the most intimate relationship we have. What is the strongest sense of belonging we have? Because you have a sense of belonging on multiple levels. You have a sense of belonging to your family, to your extended family, to your tribe, to your city or country of origin, to your neighborhood, to your masjid and the congregation in the masjid. You have multiple belongings. But if I ask you what's the deepest sense of belonging you have, you would probably say it's to my family. It's to my wife, it's to my children, it's to my parents. That level of belonging is the deepest one for all human beings. It's the most intimate one for all human beings. But what does Allah say about that most intimate understanding of belonging? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُونُوا قَوَّامِينَ بِالْقِسْطِ شُهَدَاءَ لِلَّهِ وَلَوْ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَوْ الْوَالِدَيْنِ وَالْأَقْرَبِينَ. Allah says, that, O you who believe, stand firmly for justice, even if it be against your own parents and yourselves and your family. So even in that most intimate level of belonging, which is our own selves and our own families, our own children, our own wives and parents, Allah says, you don't go with them, you don't support them because they're your family members if they're supporting injustice. So if my children, my parents, my wife is supporting injustice and I am being asked to be a witness, I cannot support them because they're my family. I must support justice even if it's against them and even if it's against my own self. That's the Muslim understanding. And so you take that concept and you apply it to everything. You apply it to your extended family, you apply it to your neighborhood, you apply it to your congregation, you apply it to your country and nation. Which means what? Which means so long as this country and so long as our government is supporting justice and is supporting the interests, the good interest of the world, is supporting the weak and oppressed, is supporting equity between people and equality between people, is supporting making this world a better place, a peaceful place, avoiding war. So long as our government is doing those things, we support our government. And we stand with our government. And we will do what we can to help our government. But if our government is supporting injustice, if our government is against the weak and the disadvantaged and the disenfranchised of society, if our government is pushing for unjust wars and for pitting people against each other and for encouraging racism or discrimination, or is taking policies to ruin the environment which we have been entrusted with, if any of those things happen, we are against our government. And it is our obligation to be against our government. As the Prophet ﷺ told the believers, "Unsur akhaka zaliman aw mazluma." Support your brother, whether he be the oppressed or the oppressor. And the companions didn't understand that, because they understood Islam to be a fundamental principle of Islam is you stand for justice no matter what. So when the Prophet ﷺ told them, support your brother whether he be the oppressed or the oppressor, they said, we understand, O Prophet of Allah, that we would support our brother if he's oppressed. But how do we support him if he is the oppressor? And he said, you support him if he's the oppressor by stopping him from his oppression. That is your support for him. When you stop your brother, your father, your leader, your country, your government from oppressing people, you are supporting them. That is our understanding. Our understanding as Muslims is I support you by stopping your aggression, by stopping your oppression. And I do it because I belong to you. He didn't say support the enemy, he said support your brother. So the person I'm connected to, the person I care about, or the country I care about, or the family I care about, or the congregation I care about, I will support them by stopping them from injustice if they were to enter into injustice. So we belong to this country. We love our nation, and we love the people of this country, and we want what is best for them. In our hearts as Muslims, we ought to want what is best for them. The Prophet ﷺ yearned for people who were not his faith, of his faith. They were not Muslim. The people of Quraysh and other people that were not Muslim, he loved them. And he loved what is best for them. And he wanted khair for them and for their children. He wanted what's good for them. So this idea that because we have a different faith as Muslims, we do not want what is best for other people wasn't the way of the Prophet ﷺ. He wanted what is best for people. But our belonging and our love for this nation is never blind loyalty. It's never blind. We are people that stand in witness for justice. And when this country and when our government and when the people around us are calling for what is good, we support them fully. And when it is not, we stand up and we oppose injustice. So that is on the concept of belonging. Belonging is feeling this connection with people, and that's very important for us as Muslims. I remind my dear brothers and sisters that the Prophet ﷺ, and in the Quran, many times, the people of the prophets who were opposed by their people would continue to address their people with Ya Qawmi. They would continue to say, "Oh my people," even when they were of a different faith, even when they were of a different religion, and even when they rejected Islam, and even when they opposed Islam and opposed their prophets, that did not break the connection between them. And this is when people are attacking you, let alone when you're in a country of people that don't attack you and guarantee your rights and support your identity and support your human rights and your ability to live in this land peacefully. How can we be against them? How can we not feel a connection towards them? أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه غفور رحيم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على هذا النبي الكريم وعلى من اتبعه بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. With that, I wanted to say that this is our challenge in this country. It is for us to understand the true Islamic concept of belonging, is to understand the true Islamic concept behind our identities, and to give that to our kids and to give that to our youth so that there is no confusion and that there is no misunderstanding of what it means to be Muslim in this country, what it means to belong to this society or any society a Muslim lives in. It is the same. We live in this country and we enjoy the freedoms in this country, and we understand that many Muslims around the world are oppressed and are under very difficult conditions in Muslim majority countries where their human rights are abused, where their fundamental right to live in freedom and to live without corruption doesn't exist. And those things exist here. Those Islamic concepts, Islamic values do exist here. And so long as that is the case, we are people that respect that, appreciate that, support that, and will do everything we can to be productive, engaged, active citizens in this country, inshallah. I will pass the announcement that Ala Abu Hussein passed away. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on him and forgive him and give contentment and patience to his family in Alberta. Brother Ala Abu Hussein in Alberta passed away, so please make dua for him. Please remember him and his family in your dua. And I will end with dua and we will pray inshallah. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم والأموات. اللهم إنا نسألك الجنة وما يقرب إليها من قول وعمل ونعوذ بك من النار وما يقرب إليها من قول وعمل. اللهم آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم انصر الإسلام والمسلمين وارفع راية الحق والدين. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين وأقم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. والشمس وضحاها والقمر إذا تلاها والنهار إذا جلاها والليل إذا يغشاها والسماء وما بناها والأرض وما طحاها ونفس وما سواها فألهمها فجورها وتقواها قد أفلح من زكاها وقد خاب من دساها. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. كذبت ثمود بطغواها إذ انبعث أشقاها فقال لهم رسول الله ناقة الله وسقياها فكذبوه فعقروها فدمدم عليهم ربهم بذنبهم فسواها ولا يخاف عقباها. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.